Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences, such as...
It wasn't until way later, 17 years old, when I was like, I think this is what it is. This is what I have. And then finally got diagnosed at 18. And that's when I was just like, well, maybe I should start talking about it more.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey everybody, it's Ben, and if you can believe it, we're already at the season finale. This episode closing out season 4 of Tourette's podcast, after which I will take some time to chill out and think and read and integrate the things I've learned through the conversations we've had here in season 4. And then work will begin on season 5, and that's going to be here before you know it. But back to season 4 and what I've gotten from talking this time around with Ed, Maggie, Denise, Miles, Mike, Amanda, Marco, Andrew, Esther, Jason, Daphne, Tourette's Cop, Yuki, Rachel, Jerry, another Jason, and the person we're going to hear from today, her name is Haley. I think that's everyone from this season, people from all different walks of life who have Tourette Syndrome, a neurodevelopmental disorder that I too have, and it's somehow simultaneously the most misunderstood yet most relatable thing out there in terms of being human and being diverse in the brain. I'm not saying that in the sense of like it's a competition between neurological disorders or anything else. I'm just saying it with a sense of pride. That wouldn't be possible for me without these conversations here, and it really, truly, honestly is one of the top feelings in the world to know that people have credited these conversations as their inspiration to open up about TS publicly for the first time. And for a lot of people I've heard from, these conversations are an early piece of research as well for people, brand new to Tourette maybe, like with a new diagnosis in the family or for oneself. Maybe you suspect you have Tourette, which can be kind of a freak out moment for some people, to say it crudely, I guess, and it's just nice to hear people talk about it, like the actual practical application in their lives. So you have a more confident frame of reference based on reality, which can include some cool things. So here's some takeaways for me from season 4. Number 1, the younger Touretters we've talked to give me a really good feeling about the future in terms of how TS is handled and understood socially. Like Maggie, who we talked with pretty early in the season. She's just cool and talented and going about her life, and even if there might be hard times with TS, like hard times directly traced to TS. Hard times are not exclusive to it. And so the sense of just cool authority that comes off the younger Touretters, like I personally look up to that. Number 2, Tourette is not just about ticking. And we've known that before this podcast ever existed. It's been a theme since season 1. This is not new, but it's becoming more of a substantial thing to talk about here. You know how sometimes for some people, the ticking isn't anywhere near as problematic as the other things that so often come with or associate with TS, like ADHD, the anxiety, the sleep issues, OCD, depression, and so on. A couple seasons ago, I got more requests from listeners to talk more about these comorbidities instead of just the tics and the social situations. And it's obvious we needed to because these comorbidities are often overshadowing everything. I mean, not with everybody, for a lot of people with Tourette. And it's important for the awareness conversation to talk about all these other things that so commonly occur with it. And yeah, if we're talking specifically about Tourette syndrome, it does have a specific definition, and it depends on the occurrence of motor and vocal tics together, but we're not really getting the context right. If we don't talk more about how, say, anxious or stressful situations can cause tics to flare up, like I definitely deal with depression and anxiety and all that, really shaky reactions to stress, and my tics will flare up, like the tic is a symptom for something else. I'm not a doctor, not a scientist, it's just kind of obvious at this point. We can't talk about TS and only talk about ticking. Number 3, don't forget that Tourette is just one kind of tic disorder. Arguably, it's the most popular in name, but it's not the only one, and it's important to remember that sometimes, people with non-Tourette tic disorders, like chronic motor tic disorder, really do share the same experiences as Touretters, but often don't feel included because it's not Tourette, or they have to go extra lengths to qualify their experiences, which they shouldn't have to do. The Tourette community should be instant community. Thanks to Rachel from episode 13 for reminding us of that. And I'll add that the Tourette Association of America looks out for all tic disorders. Number 4, a lot of Touretters are also photographers, and a lot of them see that activity as a great way to dismiss social awkwardness or anxiety by having a tool that gives a sense of purpose and focus and creativity and artistic results all in one. And we knew that Tourette and art have crossed paths pretty frequently, and that's not news. Like Tourette is all over music. But I love how when we did an episode with Mr. Move and Speak, I heard from a lot of you who related to our talk about street photography and social interaction and how having a camera kind of makes it work for you. Like if there's a big gathering that you're nervous about, family occasion, reception, photography can be kind of a positive connection. Number 5, you guys are better than me in terms of being succinct about what the takeaways are from season 4. Egg Cooney on Twitter says, quote, "We are all from Touretteistan, but the diaspora has spread far and wide. And people with TS are all over the world making a difference, doing awesome things, and living with and overcoming challenges." End quote. Hailing from Scotland, Michael says he enjoys, quote, "the continued acknowledgement of the diversity of our TS community. It's so hard to actually say that's stereotypical TS." Thanks, Michael. He left that comment in the Facebook discussion group. We've got hundreds of people in the discussion group right now. And we've talked about a lot of cool things that have happened over the course of 2019, for example. Like the Tourette's podcast logo wound up on a race car in the UK. We went to Minneapolis, Minnesota to meet up with Tourette doctors and researchers and fellow Touretters as well for a collaboratory approach to Tourette research and how to apply it in the world. Shout out to Elia, who I worked especially close with on that project. It was great getting to know him and the work he does as a Touretter who also does work in the field. Then we went to Los Angeles to meet actor/director Ed Norton, who gave a special screening of his movie Motherless Brooklyn to a theater filled with Touretters. This is something the Tourette Association made happen with Warner Brothers, and there's a little short film that my wife and I made capturing that event and what the Tourette community thought of the movie. If you go to the YouTube page of the Tourette Association, you'll find it there. It's also at tourettespodcast.com. We continued our relationship with Geeks Rising, the Geeks Rising network, and I got to appear on some of the other podcasts on that network, like On the Subject and Sunshine and Power Cuts, which did this multi-day kind of online festival that was cool to take part in, and then Conversations with Creators, where I talked about just kind of the act of being a creator, being a podcaster, but also talking about Tourette Syndrome to more of a general listening audience. So the reach grew, and not last and certainly not least either, the Tourette Association of America became the primary sponsor of the show, which is awesome. This is an independent podcast in terms of how it works and functions, the production and everything, but that can't happen without fuel. Even though Tourette is an amazing source of energy, this podcast is not a perpetual motion machine, and it takes work. And, everybody knows how podcasts work now. And I'm so thrilled the Tourette Association knew that and wanted to partner to keep this thing going for everybody. Amanda and Megan and everybody there in the New York office has been a lot of fun to work with, and just a lot happened this time around, this season or in 2019, and it just felt like a new breakthrough. So thank you so much. There's better content on this podcast than me just thanking people every week, but I can't do any of this without... Okay. Let's get to it this week. This is the finale episode of season 4 with Haley, our guest this week. She's known to some of you already on social media. She was doing a really great video series of Tourette Syndrome facts and awareness points. And a fun thing about this one is we really let loose on the things that frustrate us, that can poke at those rage aspects that can sometimes accompany having TS. And then she just closes it out with her take on how we can all just kind of relate and relax and live together on this planet. This is me and Haley.
My name is Haley Carlton, and I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I have Tourette syndrome.
So are you going through school, or are you at a career stage, or where are you at?
Yeah, so actually I just graduated with my bachelor's in psychology this past December from the University of Montebello. Thank you.
Awesome. Congrats. What's your plan with that, with putting that kind of thing in action? Is this something you're going to keep developing with higher education, or something you're going to, you're going to dip your toe in the professional world, or?
Yeah, well, so there's pretty much a bunch of different directions that I could go. I really just, I'm kind of just trying to get a steady job right now. So yeah. Professional, yeah, because I do have some experience in human resources, and I really enjoy that. But for a while, I really wanted to go into occupational therapy. So that's also kind of in the back of my mind.
That's interesting for this audience specifically. I mean, was there any kind of tie-in with that in your mind, or were there any experiences that you were trying to counter, or maybe back up too? Like, why specifically the psychology angle? Honestly,
yeah, it's really my personal experiences, and I'm an observer. I I'm kind of intuitive, and people close to me, I can kind of read people, and I find it very interesting to dive deeper into it to see what makes people tick, pun intended.
Yeah, I mean that's because I've always been interested in that too, and I definitely consider myself an observer. Part of it, and I feel like I'm going to frame this in a creepy way, but the street photography stuff I do, I just like sort of studying urban or sort of socialized settings, where there's an interaction of people and they have to contend with one another, and everybody, there's the sort of standards of manners, and it's just how do people do it? How do people pick up on each other? What are the vibes that work? And I've always been fascinated by that because I think I've done okay just conversationally with people, but in terms of me feeling like, I'm on their level or we're having a conversation where we're really connecting, when it comes to everyday people out there in the world, I don't feel like I feel that feeling a lot. And I think that fascinates me and makes me kind of curious about people in general.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes, especially because everybody has a different experience. Everybody's going through something. And so I always try to factor in that when I'm like talking to someone or when I'm trying to understand why somebody behaves the way they do specifically.
Maybe this is a good way to kind of get to know your TS and tics and all of that kind of out in the world. Is this something that is kind of readily apparent with you or something that you're vocal about, or how much of your daily life is kind of like a public awareness of your TS?
Right. Well, I would say much more now that I'm aware of it. So I wasn't officially diagnosed until I was 18 years old. So my entire childhood, I pretty much knew I was different. It was easy to tell. I was weird. There was something wrong with me. At least that's how I thought in my mind. I was different. What am I doing? Why can't I stop making these noises? Why can't I stop doing these movements, hitting my head? I don't know what I'm doing, but I can't help it. So it wasn't until way later, 17 years old, when I was like, I think this is what it is. This is what I have. And then finally got diagnosed at 18. And that's when I was just like, well, maybe I should start talking about it more. And I did.
When you were kind of guessing, maybe this is what I have, how did that information come to you? Where do you remember kind of first learning about what Tourette Syndrome was or hearing about that?
I want to say movies, honestly. And I did my capstone paper on this actually about how Tourette Syndrome has been misrepresented in the media and how that has changed. And that was a big part of it. And, because it's spreading stereotypes. I don't want to say that sometimes stereotypes aren't true, because there is some truth in them, and I understand that, but it's not everybody. Wait, but I thought Tourette's was just swearing, obviously. It's not.
Yeah. It's, I guess I've been trying to be more, I think kind of going back to the word empathy, like I've been trying to be more empathetic with people who I think that's their starting point and they just haven't been really told otherwise. And I don't expect everybody to be a complete expert about Tourette syndrome, but especially with I guess coming from maybe kind of a movie standpoint, and this is what people think about it. I mean, walking into it from that frame of reference can also be kind of frightening, maybe even a bit disappointing if you're like, oh God, this is what I have. And how did you feel about it when trying to sort things out with yourself and you're like, maybe this is what I have? I mean, did that feel like a good thing or a bad thing or a panic or?
A little bit of everything, mainly relief. Yeah. Pretty much. Because I'm like, okay, I can put a name to what I have. And that's all I really wanted. I mean, I made my own suppression techniques. I figured them out growing up. I felt like I had to, because I had teachers. I was getting in trouble and they would look at me funny, like, what are you doing? I had the whole class look at me. Embarrassment will do it to you, man. I'm telling you. That'll do it.
Being young and being aware of the first impression and how much weight that has. I mean, that's your currency,
Especially in childhood.
That's your capital. And
critical development, yeah.
I mean, this is sort of a kind of a caricature way to say it, but, if something sort of devastatingly embarrassing happens to you when you're a really young kid and you're trying to make your first impression and, it's just a really sensitive time. You want to be really careful about, at least if you're like me, which is how I was when I was in, middle school and high school. I wanted to be really careful with, this information about me and what people knew. And because I feel like I couldn't trust the people around me to be responsible with it. And I would just be the Tourette's guy or whatever. And were you kind of playing exercises like that in your mind of like, oh my God, how am I going to explain this? And
no, not at the age of when I found out, only because I was old enough to understand and everyone around me was old enough to understand and there wasn't as much judgment as there was acceptance.
So you were a lot younger when you started presenting tics, and I was,
I was 5. I was 5 years old. Yeah.
Because even when I was 18, I was still, very much shameful and bottled up. But that's something I started. That was the decision I made when I was like 12.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't until I was like 37 that I was like, okay, I'll start talking about this and opening up about it. And the past couple of years, I'm 39 now, have been like completely life-changing. And you can play these games all day of like, what if, or, what if I had been just.
Oh yeah. I play the what if game all the time. And I, what if I had known when I was younger, would I have gotten more help? Would I have gotten a 504 if I needed one? But then again, I'm also glad the way that things happened, because I wouldn't have, grown up with the resilience that I have. And I wouldn't have been able to suppress as much as I've been able to. And that's helped me.
Yeah. Well, talk about that. Like, how do you suppress and everything?
Oh gosh. I kind of like rerouting, if that makes sense. Or I'm very good at kind of having the tics there, but as small as I can make them, or as quiet as I can make them, but I can still feel my muscles tense without anybody noticing, if that makes sense.
Like a silencer on a gun or something. You're just
really
kind of
hard to explain, but there are others around me that will understand if they have Tourette syndrome. They know that feeling when you can feel the tension, or how badly you want to strain your throat and you can't, or you just don't want to disrupt class or something.
Yeah. There are practical times to, there may be one mentality that who cares? This is me and I'm ticking and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But there are definitely times where, even though I'm all for TS equality and tick openly and be yourself and all that, there are definitely practical times where I want to kind of hold it in.
That's why I'm good at kind of measuring when I can let them out to help. If I know if something wild is happening or going on, I feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. That's fun. I think I've talked about this in the podcast before. When I mow the lawn, that's like the best recreation time besides just me being in the car.
For me, it was like in high school. I did show choir for 4 years in high school, my entire high school. And whenever we would have our concerts and people were cheering or being loud, perfect opportunity.
Wow. So before that, was it the kind of thing to where you were trying to hold in your tics, or were you just kind of in a frame of mind where that wasn't really bothering you?
I think it was, I was just focused well, and that helped. And sometimes I would just not be focused at all, or just in my own head. I'd be in my own little world. And I'd be like shrugging my shoulders. I have not as, it's hard because I don't have those memories as much anymore. They've kind of faded, or they're foggy. I do have distinct memories of when I was called out on them. Those were the moments where they'll stay with me forever because it's embarrassment. And I can remember I was in 5th grade maybe, and my teacher got on to me because I was shrugging my shoulders and looking away, and I wasn't paying attention. I was just moving my neck around. And she stopped talking and waited. And I didn't know that. So it was a good few long seconds for me to realize that everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to stop. And those moments, I guess I have forgotten, maybe because I didn't know it.
This is pre-diagnosis, right?
Correct. Because in grade school, a lot of foggy moments when it comes to tics, except the ones where I was only made aware of what I was doing, and I didn't know they were tics. So
what did that do in terms of making you feel, self-conscious, or that there's something maybe I do need to fix about myself? Or were you even having those thoughts?
Oh, extremely self-conscious.
Yeah.
It made me feel terrible because I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't help it. All I knew was that I couldn't help it, but I need to try.
Yeah.
And I did as much as I could. But my family knew. They understood, but they didn't know what it was. My pediatrician just told my mom, "Oh, it's just a phase.
Yeah.
So they'll go away."
Right. Yeah.
And he told her that for quite a few years because she knew, and she brought it up to him several times, saying, "Hey, she's still doing these movements and tics and twitches." And he goes, sometimes kids can have them, which is true. I get it.
Yeah.
Kids are weird. Okay, kids are weird.
Yeah.
They go through phases. I get that. But after years and years, he should have consulted or asked my mom to refer her to a neurologist. But he didn't know. So I don't hold it against him anymore. I did for a while just because I was like, well, why didn't you know, man? But he didn't know.
Just with your tics, was this something that was kind of always on your mind, or did it kind of get to the point where you're sort of like, well, who cares what it is? This is me. Was there ever a time where you just weren't looking for an answer?
Through my childhood, no. I always was curious as to why I was doing this. For a moment, when I was about 13, 14, I thought I was autistic.
Yeah.
And because I babysat a girl who had pretty severe autism, she also had tics. I assumed that meant that I had autism. I don't have autism, though.
What about, were there any comorbidities that you were dealing with? Sleep issues, anxiety, depression, OCD, anything like that?
OCD is the most prominent at the moment and always has been. I feel like, I've always had anxiety. I feel like most people who have diagnosed like anxiety disorders will say, oh, well, I feel like I've had anxiety forever, because usually that's kind of how it happens. But I'm convinced that my OCD has been here before my Tourette's. I'm pretty convinced of that, only because stories that my mom tells me from before I could remember. I can remember. I'm very particular. I'm a perfectionist. I know that's not all what OCD is. I know there's a huge stereotype on OCD, but I always have had intrusive thoughts, unwanted thoughts, and I have compulsive behaviors, and little things if something is off slightly to my liking, I have to fix it, or else my entire day is ruined. And it's going to be on my mind for the rest of the night, the day. Yeah.
So was it ever so interfering that, what did you try to do about it if it ever got out of hand or became something that you perceived as a problem?
Well, I didn't. I am now. It was never as much of a problem as the tics were growing up.
Yeah.
I feel like the Tourette Syndrome was a lot. There was like a priority, I guess, in its presence as I was growing up, and then the OCD and the TS pretty much flipped in my adulthood. So now OCD is a much bigger problem to me than my Tourette's, because I've just accepted it. Maybe it's because I'm okay with it and I know it's there, and it's, hey, I am who I am. But the OCD, there's the thoughts that I can't get out of my head clearly. So that's become way more prominent recently.
We'll be right back. The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to those with Tourette syndrome or tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance. As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports the authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the TS community. To learn more, visit Tourette.org. TOURETTE.org. Have you experienced other things that feel like kind of the greater universe of TS, so to speak?
Oh, definitely. I have some sensory issues. I would not call it sensory processing disorder. I do have some sensory issues, more visual than anything else. I get very overwhelmed pretty easily in crazy situations where there's just a lot of people in one room. I'm not claustrophobic, but when there's a lot going on around me, I will try not to panic.
Yeah.
And if I do, I just walk out of the room.
It's kind of weird that when there is, so I always call it, if I reference Whole Foods to my wife, it's always a reference that like there's too much stuff going on around me.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I just can't go into tight grocery stores, and I can't, it's just, when it feels like there's a lot of people competing for the same space that I'm just trying to stand in, it's really frazzling. It manifests in my neck as like a physical pain. That's what it'll feel like. I don't know what that is. If that's just, I don't know how that works, a stress pain or what, but it's really stressful and vision starts to get dusty.
It could be also ensuing an anxiety attack, which it wouldn't make sense. I mean, you're in a kind of a state of heightened fight or flight response. Yeah. But
Airports.
It's kind of like, right. It's kind of like, for me, there's so much going on that I can't pay attention to one thing at a time because there's way too much going on. Or if someone's competing for my attention.
Oh man, if you're on the phone, and someone's saying like, "Hey Haley," that's like an instant headache.
Well, yeah. Well, that just pisses me off. But usually, like a birthday party or like my graduation recently, I've had different people trying to talk to me, and get my attention all at once, and I'm trying to turn my head and speak to the right people and make sure everyone's gotten their turn if they want to speak, and it get really overwhelming. Yeah. And you can see it in my face. I try not to show it, but I have a terrible poker face, and it's clear when I'm getting overwhelmed.
If I go to, say I'm going to a friend's house, like he's having a picnic or something, and there's a lot of old friends that I haven't seen, maybe 10 of them or something, that I haven't seen in a couple of years, or people I don't see regularly, I get really overwhelmed really fast with the anxiety of who do I talk to first? And do these other people think I'm ignoring them? Or like, it's just, if there are crowds of people that don't maybe know each other, which one do I start with first? Does the other one feel snubbed? And just, I think having the options in front of me, limiting my options has been, I think, the most healthy thing I've ever done with my life, is to really try to simplify as much as I can, because I can really, paralyze myself with options, good or bad. Just if there's a lot of stuff I can do with the things around me, that's a really overwhelming feeling.
Like changing your perspective helps a lot.
Yeah. Searching for ways to feel better by doing something systematically different from how you've done it before. Kind of forcing a limitation of options.
Especially if you're detail-oriented, which I am. Yeah. I got to make sure things are the way I want to. And it's very time-consuming.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're explaining it better than I am. It's the process of me, I guess, staying detail-oriented, but having fewer details to keep track of. And I changed my editing software for my photos, and it has far fewer options, way more basic. But I find that it's the basics that kind of work for me, I guess. And with this podcast too, I mean, I can spend a lot of time on it being, I think, excessively detailed sometimes.
Yeah.
It's kind of a self-torture in a way, but so you're really detail oriented too.
Very much so. Yeah. That comes from, I think, my early memories of what I think is OCD. Yeah. Just because I can remember, and like I said, memory is funny because it's malleable. It's not always correct. So sometimes you'll get some information to kind of help fill it in to have it make sense. Yep. So part of this is my memory. Part of it is what I've been told from my mom. There was this, either right before my brother was born or right when he was born. I was 2 years old, and me and my older sister were going to paint plates. We used to paint plates, and I guess people still do that. I don't know if people still paint plates. And she did Pretty Rainbow. She was almost 6 years old or just turned 6 years old. And so she had a pretty rainbow and I was too. So I painted a smiley face and I loved it. I loved the smiley face. But then I signed it because I saw that my sister signed her name. So I was like, oh, I'm going to sign my name as well. And my name's spelled Haley. And I messed up the Y at the end. And I had a comma part. I can remember, to this day, I can remember how much it bothered me.
I can feel that too.
It's very interesting. Like, just because I had messed up the Y,
Man.
It was, I don't know, I had painted it backwards or something. I don't know how I messed up the Y.
Yeah.
My mom still has that plate. She still loves it to this day. And I can look back on it thinking it's cute, but I can also, it's weird. I can put myself in that little toddler's mind about how frustrated that I was as something so unimportant because I was 2. I mean, it's cute when kids mess up.
Yeah.
But I can remember it bothering me so much because it had to be perfect.
This is going to sound so selfish, but like, I typically don't like people messing with my things because I feel like anything that I have that's imperfect or messed up is not because of me. It's because of somebody else. And
you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
That's me to a T. And I think that's a big part of it is lack of control. And that's something I've been working on about mainly my thoughts as well. And there are things that are out of my control, so I have to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I can't accept it, I have these, especially lately, these miniature episodes of rage almost. I don't think I've ever experienced rage, at least not to the levels of which I know about.
Yeah.
But like kind of just miniature outbursts because I'm frustrated with something that I can't control, something that I want to do, but I can't do. And that takes up time as well. That's why I always try to be good about time management because that'll take up a lot of my time just pacing back and forth on, okay, I need to do this, but I can't do this until I do this. Sometimes I'll go hours without eating because I need to complete something that I need to do. Or that I think I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I will definitely lock myself in to my seat when I'm on a roll doing something that I just want to see the ending of. And whether it's a project or, a series of photos or something like that, I won't get up to use the bathroom. I won't do I just lock myself there to get it done. And that's kind of a self-imposed stress that I'll do to myself that I think will sometimes kind of warm up the back of my neck and give me a headache. And with rage, I know what you're talking about too. I know the feeling of if I had control of it, it wouldn't be that way. Like that's kind of the frustrating feeling that can kind of spin in your head, or at least mine, and will kind of create this feeling of rage. And coming down from that, well, first off, what does it feel like to you when you come down from a feeling of rage? Does it leave you with? It leaves me with a headache that will basically last for the day.
It doesn't give me a headache, but I do have physiological responses. I'm hot.
Yeah.
I feel I can feel my blood running through my veins. My hands get clammy and sweaty and like clenched in a fist. Like I want to hit myself or the wall because I don't want to hit anybody else. I don't want to take my anger out on other people physically or other. So I get this horrible feeling that I just want to hurt myself, but I don't. So I try to simmer down and cool off.
Yeah.
Literally, I'll go, if it's cold outside, I'll go outside because that helps.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I'll feel my heart racing. So I'm like, I need to calm down because I can tell when I get really frustrated or I'll scream. That's pretty much it. And it doesn't help, but I'm still working on some coping skills with my OCD mainly.
I like that you mentioned the cold because it's kind of feeling that contrast is kind of a shock. With depression, for sure, there have definitely been times where I've just felt bad, just horrible. Mm-hmm. And I actually remember this fairly recently. I was practicing with the band that I play with, and afterward, a couple of my friends were just having a cigarette outside. I don't smoke, but I just hung out with them for the specific purpose of just standing there in the cold with them for a little bit. And the conversation kind of wasn't the point. It was just me kind of standing in the cold to kind of just change how I was and give myself a different physiological response and seeing if just something like that kind of shook something loose to where I would feel better by the time I got into the car. And 10 minutes standing out in the cold just kind of changed everything for me. I think just because of that contrast and just kind of forcing myself to kind of be different for a minute.
Yeah. For me personally, we have a porch swing, and I'll sit for like about 30 minutes, and I'll just swing back and forth on a kind of like a sensory swing, but it's just a porch swing, and I'm just sitting vertically and going back and forth.
Yeah.
And that helps, I guess, just regulate me.
Is sleep an issue?
Sleep for me has been on, opposite ends of the spectrum. Sometimes it's really hard for me to sleep, and I'll be up till 2 a.m. Other times I can fall asleep very easily. I do have a method to the madness now. I've really enjoyed listening to like white noise or sometimes ASMR. And I also have a weighted blanket, and it is a lifesaver for me.
Yeah. I just had a conversation with one of my coworkers today about a weighted blanket.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
I know for some people it can make them hot, but I always make sure the air conditioning is on because I'm hot-natured. Because if I don't have my weighted blanket, I have pillows, and the pillows will all fall off the bed, which, bothers me because I don't like things touching the floor.
Yeah.
So it's like a horrible cycle. I need this weight because it's a good compression.
Yeah.
I don't really like to, I'm not much of a hugger, at least not intimately with family or anything. Even with them, I'll pretty much just kind of side hug.
Right.
Or if they want to hug me, I usually have my arms to myself and just kind of like a cocoon. And I kind of sleep that way too.
Yeah.
So I have the blanket over me, just kind of like wraps around me as I'm stiff as a board, and it works.
We kind of hit on this a little bit earlier, but how much of your sort of daily interaction, conversation, awareness, friends, how they regard you, I mean, how much is TS sort of part of the day, like an apparent part of you?
Throughout the day, it's stretched out, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's... like I said, I take medication for it. So my mornings are better than my nights because that's when I take it. And so I'm pretty calm in the mornings, and then falling kind of, I don't want to say downhill, but throughout the afternoon, it kind of wears off. And so I'm a little bit more, it's more apparent, at least for me and for others. And sometimes I can't, sometimes it'll take me a while to say what I need to say or answer somebody. Because I'm so focused or on whichever tick that I'm doing, which for me most recently is flexing my muscles, and not in like a not in like a flexing my muscles in the mirror.
Right. Yeah. Not Muscle Beach.
No. Contracting them and moving my neck.
Yeah.
To the point where I've hurt my neck. I've pinched a nerve multiple times where I get scared. But so sometimes they can be a little bit uncomfortable with that. But I mean, my family is okay with it. I live at home, so they get it. They're not bothered by it.
Right.
I mean, it's just a part of daily routine, like it always has been. And then for friends, they know. I mean, I haven't seen as many recently because I've graduated. I've come back home. But everyone's really cool with it. And sometimes there's moments where, not that they forget, but they don't know that what I'm doing is a tick.
Okay.
And then I'm just like, oh, no, that's what it is. That's all.
Well, so even with tics that can kind of bother you and cause you pain, and I mean, I have the same thing. My neck has always been kind of a problem with me. Yet I'm still kind of, I'm okay with having TS at this point in my life. Just what I know about it, what I know about me, and maybe how it shaped me. I'll take it, in the end. I mean, where are you with that in terms of acceptance, self-acceptance, anything you'd like to sort of address first, or, where are you?
Yeah, I'm very, to the point of acceptance, especially with, Tourette's. I've gotten to the point where I'm just okay with it. I've had it this long. I've kind of got it figured out. I know what's going to make me more overwhelmed. I've got myself figured out. And so I'm pretty much just okay with it. I sometimes think of the what ifs, and then I'm like, you know what? No, I am the way who I am, and I'm okay with it because it could be a lot worse. And I know for others, it is a lot worse. I'm very thankful that I have some management on my Tourette syndrome. I'm thankful that I didn't get the help I probably needed as a child because I did it myself. And like I said, that built up resilience. And so I'm proud of myself for that.
Yeah.
With anxiety and depression, because I do actually have generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. I wasn't diagnosed with those until I was 19 because the year I turned 19 was where I feel like my entire mental state just kind of dropped because all of a sudden I had depression. I had no idea why, but I've gotten a hold on that. So it's hard to even put myself back in that state of mind because it was kind of like I was a different person and I don't even remember it.
Wow.
So for that, I'm pretty okay with it only because I don't think about it.
Yeah.
But anytime it does come back, I'm like back into that state where I'm a different person. And then I would probably say something a lot different than in the positive state that I am in now.
Well, I mean, the reason I'm aware of you is Instagram and, some of the awareness stuff you do. And I think it's awesome that, you put facts out there. I mean, you do a lot of advocacy work.
I do. And if it wasn't for, honestly, if it wasn't for the Tourette Association, I don't think I would have ever done this because I put it out there before. It didn't, really get much. I just was like, okay, it's here. I'm here. This is it about, May 15th, Tourette Syndrome awareness. But then I searched for the Tourette Association because I think I've seen it on Instagram before in the past. So I searched it and then I saw they had a Rising Leader Youth Ambassador opportunity. And so I just jumped on it. And then I became one, and it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have even thought about putting out all of this information. And it is all from either credible, accessible websites or organizations like Tourette.org, or scholarly, peer-reviewed articles, research articles, or literature reviews that I've either accessed for free, that's public, but quite a few of them I've accessed through institutional databases like UAB and then the college I went to, University of Montevallo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so cool that you had the research curiosity that you did to just kind of understand it and understand yourself and be able to explain it and be able to rep it. Is there anything that you think is the big thing that maybe the public still doesn't get, or just the one thing that you think needs to be kind of hammered home?
I think the biggest thing for me would be that just because, and I've heard this before, and I'd like to say it as well, that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there, or that it's better. I mean, like I said, for me, some days are better than others, and some days are much worse. Some days
Absolutely.
I don't tick that much, and I'm pretty calm, and I'm okay. And other days, it's a lot of high stress. So, like I said, just because you don't hear the tics or see the tics doesn't mean that they're not there. And I think that's something that I want people to know, whether they know about Tourette syndrome or not, because you could have all the facts. I mean, you could have everything perfect. You know that it's not just swearing. You know that it's motor and vocal tics. You know that there's comorbidities. But because sometimes, disabilities are invisible. And sometimes Tourette's can be invisible. And I think that's important to understand.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't expect anybody in, just sort of my daily life to just be an expert on Tourette syndrome and know every last thing they need to know about it to appreciate me and understand me. It's just kind of be a human being, I guess.
Yeah, actually, that's something I was thinking about today, interestingly, just because somebody doesn't understand something, because honestly, nobody can understand everything. Everybody's circumstances is different. Accept them, love them.
Yeah.
Like I said, like you said, just be a decent human being.
I'm learning about, some new things in my family with diagnoses that are hearing about these things very third, fourth, fifth hand in terms of education and accuracy and what I know about this thing. It's nice to have, I guess, this kind of reminder with me that I've been misunderstood. And I wished that wasn't the case. And I wish someone had, I guess, kind of, done me the courtesy of hearing me out and, letting them see me for, my talents or whatever, but maybe suspend my prejudices and just kind of be there to listen and learn.
Yeah. Like take a step back and reevaluate somebody else's situation maybe.
Yeah. Just, be patient with it. And, a lot of good things come from patience.
Absolutely. And nobody is more patient than my mother, my family. They're very patient with me. I can't thank them enough for that and for being such an amazing support network for me.
Yeah. That's one of the most important things of all of, you can have, very, very sort of mild TS, we'll say. I put that in quotes because it's kind of a fictitious concept in a way, but, have mild TS and have, really neglectful parents and have it not turn out well for you. Or you can have, say, quote unquote, severe TS, but have very, very supportive parents and family resources and everything. And just the value that brings and the outcome that you can get with support, kind of, I don't want to say no matter your situation, but if you do have that family support, I mean, that's the strongest starting point that I can imagine you have. Shout out to your parents.
Yeah, they're amazing. Shout out to them for loving me unconditionally. Because what more could I ask for than acceptance? I mean, if it were up to me, we'd be talking for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yep.
But I mean, we could talk about just about anything that piques my interest, and we'd be going on all night, and I would never shut up. So I think what we got is fantastic. I think this is amazing. And I thank you so much, Ben, for having me. Oh,
well, I mean, it's my pleasure. This has been, I like the frank way we kind of talked about things.
I agree.
But how do we find you? Do you want to shout out anything? Instagram handle, Twitter, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram is Haley Banion, HaleyBanion. Regarding my TikTok Tuesdays, I did end them. I finished them only because I wanted to do them every week, and I ran out of ideas. And I didn't. I hate the thought of continuing it just like weeks later, and just inconsistency bothers me. Yeah. But that's something I am actually very proud of, and the whole reason I did it really was to put correct information out there and break down statistics and the stereotypes and all the different types of tics there are, all the comorbidities, and even my story. I put my story up on there as well. If anyone is curious and wants to watch it, that's episode 4. I really am just touched, honestly, because I've had people reach out to me, you included. I didn't think this would ever happen, honestly, because I've had somebody reach out to me thanking me only because they started dating someone with Tourette syndrome and had no idea, anything about it. And so they searched and they did their Googling, and they found me on Instagram. And I mean, it brought me to tears because the fact that somebody loves someone so much and wants to understand them. Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing that I could have gotten out of this.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody. That does it for season 4. Thanks so much to Haley for taking the time and seeing us out. Thanks to the Tourette Association of America, the primary sponsor of the podcast, making it happen at Tourette.org, where you can find all kinds of free resources and webinars you can watch. You can track down a provider, and you can do what I'm planning to do, which is attend the Tourette Association National Conference coming up this May in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's in the U.S. It'll be May 14th through the 17th. The Biennial Tourette Association of America National Conference is an informative, welcoming event for the Tourette Syndrome community. Join us in Minneapolis, Minnesota for the largest national research, practice, and public information conference dedicated to Tourette Syndrome and related tic disorders. The keynote speaker this year, musician Dylan Brady. Again, Tourette.org to sign up. I'd love to see you there and hang out. I'm going to go chill out now and catch up on things, but I'm still active, and you can contact me at tourettespodcast@gmail.com. or through tourettespodcast.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter. There's the discussion group on Facebook, of course. Thank you, Sophia, the group admin who helps me so much behind the scenes. and patreon.com/Tourette's podcast if you would like to show support for the show. So just keep me posted on what's up with you in the meantime. I read every piece of email I get. Tourette'sPodcast@gmail.com. And again, season 5 is coming up. Thank you, everybody. This is Ben.